I first heard about Bitcoin, it was $5. And then it took me like a month to get the GPUs together because I was like wanting to mine the Bitcoin. And, you know, back then there was no hardware wallets or anything like that. It was just like there were some websites where you could put your Bitcoin on, or you could have it in a wallet.dat file. You can mine it to your own computer type of things. Well, the guy that I was watching on how to get gold and silver into Canada, and he's like talking about this digital gold, Bitcoin. I'm like, okay. It was like, it all clicked for me back then. It was 2011. And I was like, okay, this thing is gonna be huge someday. Like, I'm an early adopter. I love technology. I love getting scammed. So if this is a scam, I'm fine to participate. But thankfully it wasn't. If we still live in a fiat world and everything is operating on, in the public markets at least, pulling forward the future gains in the present to have a net present value, then there is some rationale behind overvaluing Bitcoin treasury companies in the present based on what they say they're going to do in the future and how their ability to execute the Bitcoin purchasing and the financial product creation, the financial engineering in the present, like how that works out.
Hi, Brad. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Yeah, things are great. I'm a little bit low energy though, just so you know.
What does this mean with your low energy? Like, I haven't slept good?
No, I'm on it's like a combination of two things. I'm doing a cut right now, so I'm on this journey of, you know, building a citadel mind and body over the last year and a half. So I hired a coach, a bodybuilding coach, and I wanted to get in shape. And so, you know, I went through a cut phase last year, and then I went to a bulk phase. So when I went to the bulk phase, I gained like 25 pounds in 7 or 8 months, going to the gym 6 days a week, eating a lot. I was eating like 3,500 calories a day by the end of it. But then I was like not happy with the way I was looking anymore. Like, sure, I was gaining a little muscle, but I'm like, coach, let's get this. I want to see my abs. That was the goal. I was like, I want abs. So, you know, since June or so, I've been cutting, and it's at the final phase of the cut right now where I'm eating like 1,500 calories a day of just chicken and rice, plain, no salt, no seasonings, nothing else, just chicken and rice 5 times a day, and water, like lots of water. So this will be done in a few days, but then I'll be finished with all the cutting, and then I'll probably have higher energy.
It's so funny because I started I think almost 1 or 1.5 weeks ago, cutting out sugar, and not entirely because like bread and stuff like that is like a little bit cheating. But like cutting out all the obvious sugar. So like no sugary drinks. I only drink either water or water with lime in it. Or like snacks and desserts, like all of that, like obvious kind of sugar I cut out. The not obvious sugar, like the carbs, like the breads, I'm not cutting out yet. I want to take it slow. But this alone was really interesting because you have I think a lower base of energy, but it's like more constant. And I actually like it more. So I'm curious, and I might try it out to like completely cut out carbs, like going a little bit more keto than I'm right now. But I love how focused Bitcoiners are with health and investing in their own time. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, I did keto before. I've tried that one like 2017, maybe. No, you know what it was? It was 2020. It was like January 2020. I saw the coronavirus thing coming because, you know, Bitcoiners follow macro a lot, at least in some phase of their Bitcoin journey. They start to become like risk managers and wealth managers and portfolio managers or whatever, and start studying macro. Well, that was the phase I was in 2020. And I saw this shit coming down the pipe, and I'm like, oh man, like this thing's, you know, killing all these people in China. Nobody's ready for this. So I'm like, I got to start eating less because I don't want to be going to the grocery store a lot. I'm going to do keto. I'm going to learn how to have no food, no sugar. So I was like, plus I'll lose some weight. And anyways, I did keto for like 2 years as a way to like prep for COVID, so I didn't have to go to the grocery store and get COVID when I thought it was like a really bad, you know, disease. But whatever. So I found though that like at the end of keto, like towards the second year of that, my muscles were actually atrophying, and I couldn't even like lift up a tire. Like I was trying to like put a tire on my RV, inside the RV, and I was just like, I can't even lift this thing up. I'm getting all these muscle pains and stuff in my chest. Like this isn't good. And so I don't think my body works very well with keto, but some people do keto really well. But I was doing dirty keto, so I was eating like lots of pepperoni sticks and cheese and moon cheese and all this crap. Like I didn't do keto properly. You're talking about whole foods, right? Like if you do keto with whole foods, carnivore style, I bet you could have a totally different experience with it.
Yeah, at the moment I'm literally just cutting out the obvious bad things. Like I'm not eating like a Snickers bar or like Trigger Coke or something like that. Like, and it's really cool. But I'm thinking of like experimenting with that. But anyways, actually starting with the episode, because I think, a lot of people are also like, always seeing guests, and most of you might not know you. So maybe for the few people that haven't seen you or haven't seen any of your episodes or haven't aren't aware of you, maybe give the people a little bit of a background of who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, what's your audience like typically? Like what type of demographic you got in the audience?
Male, 42 years old, and Bitcoiner. So I do the daily Bitcoin show, and I have mostly Bitcoiners in. I have some people that I actually have a long answer for that. The main thing is like 90% male, 10% female, something like that. Then the demographic is like, around, 35 to 45 years old is the main, demographics. And above that is a little bit more than under that. On average 10 to 20 years older than me. And then in terms of like, what is their relationship to Bitcoin? I found it really interesting because I had the face to ask the people, the community, a few questions. So I asked them, "Hey, do you do self custody?" 50-60% said yes. So there are still a few people that don't do self custody. I asked them, "Are you Bitcoin only?" The same answer actually, like 40-50% said they are Bitcoin only, and the other one said like we also have altcoins. A lot of them actually have other things outside of cryptos also, like stocks, maybe real estate, they own their own home or anything like that. That's my best guess at what my audience is. I hope this gives you a kind of a picture.
And is it mostly like Europeans or all over the world?
It's mostly in the United States. Like it's mostly 50% states. I actually talked with a lot of English content creators, and it's almost the same for everyone, with a few like differences, but like the big picture is the same. So even though I'm from Austria, 0.8% of my audience comes from Austria. So, because it's English speaking, and especially from Europe, if you think about the European audience, most people, prefer native language. And there's a lot of great German speaking podcasts, German speaking influencers and content creators. I don't know about how is it in French or Spanish, but like most people like have great native language options. So that's why the States is really big, and UK, Canada, Australia, those are like the main ones.
Right on. Well, in that case, I'm kind of a similar demographic as most of your listeners and viewers. So, to kind of, very much relate to the average, I guess, avatar listener of your show is I got into Bitcoin kind of by accident. I was an entrepreneur. So I grew up in a poor area of Canada on the east coast of Canada. And it was like I was into theater and like writing and comedy and things like that. And I went to, there's not much opportunity for that sort of stuff in the east coast of Canada. You got to go to like Toronto or something like that. And the ultimate goal for any Canadian that's into film and comedy is to leave Canada and go to the States, right? I'm sure it's similar everywhere else. You got to get to New York or Hollywood or something like that. So my kind of like naive dream when I was younger was like, I'm just going to like write a whole bunch of comedy, and then I'm going to go to Toronto, and then I'm going to do stand-up comedy, and I'm going to just write movies and then make movies, and then I'll eventually go to New York or something. So I went to a creative writing and performance comedy school actually in Toronto, and I decided like, okay, I'm going to start doing this, and I started doing it, and I was like making money on the side, paying my way through college by sewing up hacky sacks, because back in the day, like the 2002 era was like hacky sack was kind of a big fad around that time, but it was foot bag, not hacky sack. I was into foot bag, which is like hacky sack, but like when you are really passionate about it, and there's a scoring system and stuff. And you don't use those like you use cloth bags for foot bag. It's the difference. You don't use the crocheted bags. But anyways, I was like sewing them up while I was, in college, selling them to people, and paid my way through college doing that. So it was kind of entrepreneurial, like from the get go. Had, as a kid, I was doing like clown shows and magic shows and stuff. I don't really talk about that too much on podcasts, but kind of an entrepreneurial start. My mom steered me towards kind of learning how to be an entrepreneur, make money for myself. And coming from this poor area, it was like money was just something that we didn't have. And so, I have like $100 or something like that. I'm like considered rich as like a 13 or 14-year-old kid, right? Oh my God, I made $100. I'm rich. And then I just go and like buy a bunch of Christmas presents, like for all my friends and family. And that was what was fun to me. That was what kind of gave me the bug initially, I think, to start thinking about money. Was like, oh, I can save it, and then I can buy stuff for people, and then have the fun experience, and pay for my comedy shows and stuff that I was doing as a teenager. So ended up writing a screenplay, trying to get the budget raised for that. I needed $50,000 to make the movie, and like $50,000 at the time for me was like an ungodly amount that I would think like, how would I ever have a $50,000? That sounds crazy. The houses that we were buying in Cape Breton were like $20,000 to $40,000 houses back then. So even still, the real estate market's pretty depressed in Cape Breton, but with M2 money going crazy, obviously everything shot up. But the east coast of Canada is still pretty lagged compared to the rest of Canada. But anyways, nobody's going to give me this money because I didn't really have any experience. And yeah, I went to comedy school, I went to clown college, and did some stand up and stuff, but I didn't have any real credentials or experience. So I literally started going online, Googling, how do I make money on the internet? And because I was like just voracious and I just had a goal that was very clear, I was like laser focused on making this movie. I wrote the screenplay. I'm like, now I got the blueprint. I read this book, From Real to Deal by Dove Simmons. It was this like kind of at home, learn how to make a movie type of manual from any budget, whether you had like $5,000 or $5 million, he gave you the blueprint. So I was like, okay, this is what I need. This is my blueprint. I'm going to write the screenplay. I did that, and I'm going to go raise the money from investors, and then here's how I make the movie. And so I kind of like followed this path and accidentally kind of backwards myself into being an entrepreneur, because I started getting on the internet and like figuring out how scams work, basically, because I got scammed quite a bit at the very beginning, which is very similar to like the last cycle or so in crypto, where a lot of people are like, oh, I gotta get into Bitcoin. And then they start looking at Bitcoin online and they're like, oh, what's this Luna thing? I can make 12% a day. Like if I put my money in this Anchor protocol, or, oh my God, I can just buy stable coins and deposit them into Gemini or BlockFi or something and make 12% of my money. Like amazing. They're all just like the same sort of cycle repeated. Back then it was advertising. It was like you put in $1,000 into this ad website because Google ads was just kind of AdSense was taking off, and it was the big story of like Facebook was coming up and all these like Web 2.0 companies that were gonna make you a bunch of money. So people just drafted off of what was really happening. There was a legitimate tech thing happening, but all these scammers came. It was like, oh, you can make money by filling out surveys for tech companies, or you can make money by running ads on this advertising network that's decentralized. Like literally they were just coming up with all these scams. So I got scammed quite a bit, and eventually found my way to like personal development books through network marketing company. There was this network marketing company that was like selling vitamins. And I was just like, okay, well, they're teaching me about like how to think positively, how to set goals, reading books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or As a Man Thinketh, or, these sort of timeless classic sales and mindset books that that really did teach me like some things that I kept with me through the rest of my entrepreneurial career. And even still to this day, like I go back every once in a while and I reread, you know, The Richest Man in Babylon, or just recently it was How to Win Friends and Influence People again. I was like, I got to brush up on these skills, because if you're in the trenches on Twitter a lot, you know, you kind of like get rusty with being nice, and you just start to be agitated all the time and arguing with shitcoin scammers all the time and stuff like that. So, anyways, just get back to the point. I got into creating social games. So I was like an idea guy, and I tried probably like 30 or 40 online money making ideas before I started creating my own business. And, you know, I failed at probably the first 10 of them or so, but I learned a lot the whole way through, because I was into like paid to read ads, right? So I was doing like this sort of small website where people would come to me and they would like sign up, and, you know, if they wanted to make money from home, I'd be like honest with them and say, hey, I'm going to sell your contact information and I'm going to pay you like a share of the money I get. Are you cool with that? And then they'd sign up and say yes or whatever. So they get paid like 2 to 5 cents for everything they read or whatever. And then I'd sell it to these companies that were trying to make money at home leads, right? And I did that for like a little bit, like maybe a few months, and then I was like right place, right time. Facebook was just opening up their platform for the API. And this was back when like Facebook was way different than it is now. If anybody was on the internet, if your listeners are my age, like some of them were probably on Facebook in those days. And the games that were popular back then were just like graffiti wall apps. It was like little viral text apps and stuff where you could just bite your friend and then they're a zombie. And then you have a bunch of horde of zombies like all over everybody's walls and stuff like that. It was just like weird, fun text games. And I was there right at the beginning of that. And I created a couple games that blew up. And, you know, before I knew it, I had like 1 million players playing my games. And so I ended up getting through these this hurdle of how do I get to $50,000 through becoming an entrepreneur, and I ended up making the movie. And didn't focus on film. I kind of reassessed my priorities at that time. I was like, hey, I have a lot of friends in film. I had built up a network in the film industry in Canada, and like they're all poor and they're all like struggling and they're all like it's hard for them to get any money. It's hard for them to sell their films. Like, do I really like want to be making comedy movies that much that I want to have a life like that where I'm just barely making it by? Or should I refocus my energy on this game I started and this game company, which like accidentally became a huge success, in my eyes? I'm like, yeah, I got to focus on this. So it was that process of like, I was early to using eGold. I don't know if there's a lot of people that were in, a lot of people in Bitcoin kind of know of eGold. Not many probably actually were a user of eGold. So I kind of had that lesson of like decentralization actually matters back in the day, because I had some money on eGold because I was doing these online businesses getting scammed left and right. And the FBI shut down eGold. But the idea was like, oh, well, we're different than PayPal because it uses gold. So it was kind of like I saw the drawbacks of having like a digital currency that's centralized because the government can shut it down. And then I was kind of like learning all about, what am I supposed to do with my money? Now that I was actually making some money, I had made my movie. I'm like, what's next? What do I do with this? And then it was like finding out about the history of taxation and learning about fiat money and how the dollar has lost all of its value over the last 100 years. The gold bugs kind of sucked me in, like Peter Schiff and folks like that. But it was during the 2008, fallout, like the bailouts and stuff after that, where I just did not trust the banking system. And I was like, I don't want to have my money sitting in like stocks, like, or ETFs. Like, yeah, sure. Over history, if you look at them, the indexes go up and up and up, but like, it seems like a big scam. And I was like, I don't want to really be part of that system. And eventually I was like, just buying gold. I was like, I got to get some gold. And in Canada, we have this thing called tax-free savings accounts, kind of like in the States with a Roth IRA or we have a TFSA and an RSP. So there's one that's tax free and one that's tax deferred. And I was like, putting a little bit of money in those in gold ETFs and things like that. But really, I was like, I just want physical gold, because if shit hits the fan, who knows what's going to happen if this money thing falls apart and the banks collapse. There's not enough money in the FDIC to bail everybody out. This could get crazy. So I'm like, I want some physical gold. So I was buying some physical gold and silver. And then it was just the YouTube video of this guy that I was watching on how to get gold and silver into Canada. And he's like talking about this digital gold, Bitcoin. And I'm like, okay. It was like, it all clicked for me back then. It was 2011. And I was like, okay, this thing is going to be huge someday. Like, I'm an early adopter. I love technology. I love getting scammed. So if this is a scam, I'm fine to participate. But thankfully, it wasn't.
It's funny. It's super interesting because when I first got into Bitcoin, and it was probably a lot later, I was in 2020. I first also thought it's a scam, because that's what I've been told. And so when I first got into Bitcoin, I was like, I really want to learn about that, even though I think it's a scam, but I still bought it because I was like, once I have a foot in the door, I'm more motivated to really learn about it. So the first time I bought Bitcoin, I think my first $100 or $200 I put in there, I still thought Bitcoin is a scam. So it reminded me of my early days. It's interesting how you also like, it might be a scam, but I'm happy to participate in it.
Yeah, pretty much. And like, in the end, I scammed myself out of my Bitcoin, because I was like, oh, well, I got in when it was, when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was $5. And then it took me like a month to get the GPUs together, because I was like wanting to mine the Bitcoin. And, back then there was no hardware wallets or anything like that. It was just like, there were some websites where you could put your Bitcoin on, or you could have it in a wallet.dat file. And you can mine it to your own computer type of things. Well, at that point, even it was pretty much too late to mine with your own computer. You had to go through a pool. So I was like, the pool held the Bitcoin. And then you could go on websites that were like, you could buy Bitcoin, like Mt. Gox. So I was like, just got obsessed with Bitcoin that summer, and I just kind of started mining. I created a couple of Bitcoin businesses. I started buying Bitcoin, but being so early to Bitcoin, one, you don't know really anything about investing versus trading. So I didn't have an investor's mindset. I had like an entrepreneur make money mindset. And, right away I got in. It was, by the time I bought the Bitcoin, it was $10. And then within 2 months, it was $30. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm a genius. I just doubled my money on this or whatever. So I was like, what do I do? Like, I feel like I'm too late. Like, I feel like this thing's already gone way high. What do I do? And then people give you the advice, like, take out your principal and play with the house's money. So I was just like, people were advising me, just, take out what you put in, and then, the rest of it's fine. If it goes to zero, no problem. I was like, I guess that's smart advice. So the stupidest thing ever was like me knowing this thing was going to be huge. Like, I thought one day this could get to $1,000. I was really convicted. I was like, man, this thing one day could be worth like $100 billion, like, as a network. This would be crazy. So I sold half my Bitcoin at like $30, thinking I was a genius. And then, that was just one of many lessons I've learned over the years of, like, the difference between entrepreneur mindset, saver's mindset, trader's mindset, investor's mindset. I mean, there's a lot to experience and learn through, all the mistakes that and I just recently made some stupid mistakes as well with this whole Treasury thing. Like, I thought I had learned all the mistakes, but then all these Bitcoin treasuries, like, I learned a whole nother lesson on what not to do this time.
I think there's always interesting ways how you can get less Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But this is crazy because, earlier, like, to be totally fair, like, if you have Bitcoin at $30, there's a lot of questions still for Bitcoin. Like, it's so early that, selling some and taking some profits. That's why I totally respect people that got really early into Bitcoin and held through the whole time. I think the first time I bought into Bitcoin was already at 7,000. So imagine, and you went so early into Bitcoin that you thought like maybe it actually gets to $1,000. Like it's crazy the scale of that. And so being that early, there's a lot of questions still in the mind that weren't answered yet of how resilient Bitcoin actually is. And now I think we're still kind of early. Depends on like how you look at it. But there's all the questions already answered. But we had infighting with the block size wars. We had the richest man alive buying and then dumping it again with Elon Musk. We had the president not talking. Like we had so many milestones along the way. And I'm like, yeah, like most questions of how resilient Bitcoin is was already answered. And now we still have a huge upwards movement ahead of us in the next like 20, 30 years. So I have a respect for people that haven't sold early on, because there's a lot of unanswered questions back then, I guess. How was it for you for like having the conviction that it might go to $1,000 and living through the journey of it going actually to $100,000?
Yeah, man, it's been pretty crazy. Like I said, I sold half my Bitcoin at $30, thinking I was a genius, and then the next year it went all the way down to $2. So I was like, at that point, I was like, oh, I was right. That was a good move. But the smart move would have been then to buy back in at 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. But I was just like, I'm just gonna see how this like plays out. I had my couple of Bitcoin businesses that I had started on the side. They were making a little bit of money, but it was way too early. Like, think about how many users there were for a Bitcoin, only business where everything was denominated in Bitcoin. Like, there weren't that many. So I was like a startup. I was trying to do Bitcoin startups back in 2011, 12. And really, the folks that were also creating startups at that time were like Coinbase and Kraken and stuff like that. So I was just in the wrong area. I had the right idea by doing a Bitcoin startup. I was just in the wrong field. But I remember, then over the next few years, we had the bear market, and then it was really scary back then because you were afraid, actually, because Charlie Shrem and like Ross Ulbricht and all these guys that were using Bitcoin were being targeted by the government, and they were being made examples of. So there was like quite a lot of fear around being publicly into Bitcoin back in those days. And even up until probably like more recently, it's been, and even still for some software developers, like you see what's going on with the Samurai guys, like it's still a little scary, but it's a lot different. Like now it's, in most places in Canada, it kind of sucks because you still really can't get bank accounts. The banking system in Canada does not like Bitcoin. If you're a Bitcoin business or a Bitcoiner, like you still have risk of being debanked. There's lots of Canadian Bitcoiners that can't get bank accounts for their businesses. They get debanked personally. So it's like, in some ways, we are still super early because you have like TD Bank advertising to buy the Bitcoin ETF for your RSP. But then if you're selling Bitcoin or if you're in a Bitcoin business, they'll like debank you. So it's pretty crazy to think that like at 100,000, we're still early. But I do believe we are still early. I'm having the same conversations now as I did 14 years ago with random people about Bitcoin. Like they just, it's like 99 or whatever like percent of people just don't understand it yet. And that's why I get excited, because Square just turned on the Bitcoin payments for the 4 million merchants in the United States, right? And things like that are like what really lights me up. Seeing Bitcoin communities all over the place. Like we met in Lugano, and just going there and seeing what Bitcoiners are building. And like Tether is one of the, controversial in Bitcoin in some circles. But like, I have been a fan of Tether for a long time. Not that I like stable coins, but just that I appreciate that they were building on Bitcoin early, and they use Bitcoin as like their treasury reserve asset. They hold Bitcoin, they invest in Bitcoiners and Bitcoin businesses. And, seeing that little citadel that they got built and going in Lugano was inspiring. The whole team there's like, 30 or 40 people now, Bitcoiners, that have just kind of gathered in that area. and they got this co-working space where there's a sick gym in the basement. It's all orange. And then there's like, the proof of stake, STEAK restaurant next to the co-working space. Bunch of Bitcoin startups working out of there, and then Tether's office there, Blockstream's office, Vulgar Ventures. So just seeing all this stuff is exciting, but at the same time, a couple of years ago, I started thinking about this from like a long-term sort of like zoom out perspective of what is Bitcoin's impact currently on the world. In the physical world, it's pretty much meaningless. You got maybe like 10 or 20 kind of well-known Bitcoin communities that are sprouted up. You got like a couple of really cool spots like the Plan B office and what they're doing in Lugano. But you really don't, like, if you compare Bitcoin's growth and cultural impact to like gold's cultural impact, it's just like night and day. Like that alone, thinking of how much Bitcoin needs to grow as a part of culture to become even like a fraction of the amount of people in India that own gold and hold gold and respect gold. We got so much growth to go ahead of us. Just thinking about it like that, like as a physical thing. And I know we're in the digital world now, and maybe we can bypass physical infrastructure, just like cell phone and Starlink allows places in rural Africa to bypass the physical landlines to get on the internet and be connected to the world. And we may also have that, because if you look at the digital world, like Bitcoin's punching its weight class pretty well compared to the other technologies and other communities or whatever you want to call it. But I do think that there's like, as Bitcoin becomes on that path to $1 million, or it's a global reserve asset, I do think there's going to be Bitcoiners that have become very wealthy from their Bitcoin that are going to want to show up more in the community. And I think of it more like, at least here in Canada, I'm not sure what it's like in the States, but there's like Optimist clubs, Lions clubs, Knights of Columbus clubs, and all these kind of little they're decentralized in a way, but they kind of like have like a brand, but they're these little clubs that like show up locally in the community, and they help out with like kids sports events and food banks and things like that. And it was started actually 100 years ago. Most of these were started about 100 years ago during the Great Depression, or just after in World War One, or sorry, just before World War One, around that period of time where things were really bad and the money was kind of broken and unemployment was high. There was disruptive technology, like with the electrification of everything. And it was like, there was wars, there was a lot of orphans. Like, it was really bad to live in those times. Technology sucked and the money was bad, but these businessmen came together and just randomly in all these different spots, they didn't coordinate with each other to say, hey, let's start this Optimist Club where we can go show up in the community, give people hope and faith, and invest a little bit of money into the community and the kids, and also teach people and give them education about, in those days, it was a lot of religious stuff, like religion, but money as well. And then a bunch of that just started to sprout up, and that kind of became like these optimist clubs that eventually it became these large networks of communities and business people and religious people that would like want to come and show up and be big impact in the community. And like, I look at that, I see in Canada, like every city has one of these, at least one of these clubs. Every town has one of these clubs. There's a church, there's multiple churches in every town. So if you think about like how far we still have to go to build like physical presence and actually have Bitcoin become part of like cultural identity, and it's just like default, like, yes, I'm a Bitcoiner, or yes, I hold Bitcoin as the best asset. We got so much room to grow. So that's why it's like, when I think about it from back in the day when I was first in Bitcoin, it was very similar to what it is right now. Like, we still got so much room to grow. Obviously there's a lot more people that have Bitcoin, and there's a lot more people that understand it. It's a lot easier to get into Bitcoin. The tooling is better. now we got people like Jack Dorsey, or one of the richest people on the planet, who's like an all-in Bitcoin maxi. He's like doing the Bitcoin as money freedom technology thing. And you got people like Michael Seyr, who's doing the Bitcoin as a store of value, asset reserve thing. So it's just like we got all these super influential, reasonable, logical people that, you know, in some ways are becoming part of culture, like Jack Dorsey, especially with all the things that he does with mainstream apps and Tidal and all that. That's just like, it's just makes me very hopeful for Bitcoin's future. And a lot of the infighting and stuff that goes on is, you know, it's not really, used to stress me out. Crypto used to stress me out, like seeing the Silicon Valley apparatus get behind crypto. Like now you're seeing it with Zcash. There's like coordinated pumps of Zcash happening. Everybody talking about Zcash, but it's like, that used to bug me. I used to be like, oh, we got one shot. We got one chance to make money fixed. You know, we got one chance for this, and Bitcoin's the only thing that's truly decentralized. So if we split all of our focus everywhere and we start investing in all these other cryptos and stable coins and all this stuff, it's going to distract from the main mission of Bitcoin. But that was a scarcity mindset that I was in, and it was too much living in fear. And it wasn't, literally, like, I just wasn't going to the gym enough. Like, I think that's what it was in the end. I just wasn't putting in the work, you know. And now I got the proof of work, because I feel better and I'm paying more attention to positive thinking and looking at the bright side and supporting the things that I want to see and investing in companies that are doing what I want to see, and spending way less time thinking about crypto or thinking about politics or thinking about world events and macro and all that stuff. Because I realized it was just like keeping me from enjoying the wealth that I've been able to build through my conviction in Bitcoin, because I had all these negative mindsets and beliefs. I didn't want to travel anywhere. I was just like, oh, there's too much going on. And I just wasn't feeling good. I just wasn't like happy with where I had gotten in my life. So I was like, I got to fix that shit. I got to pay way less attention to all this negative stuff, focus more on the positive stuff, and, you know, get back to setting goals and achieving them, and become the type of person that can handle the Bitcoin at $1 million. Cause I do think we're going there.
It's actually interesting that you just brought that up, because the mental thing that you need to have of you being into Bitcoin and you slowly getting wealthier, you have to be ready for that. And most won't be ready for that. So this means they will sell at 200,000, they will sell at 300,000, and they will never see the million, because they gotta stop believing in that. But it's interesting. I'm curious, in your early startup phase, did any of those like really turn up good? Like what's kind of like you doing now in the space with I presume you're still doing startups, investing in Bitcoin companies. What are you doing there, and what is kind of your view on the current Bitcoin industry side? We rarely actually talk about on the podcast on like what are Bitcoin companies doing. I think we met at the Relay. I don't know what it was, a relay event somewhere of the European exchange. I think most people here probably don't know it because they're Americans, but it's something like Strike, or like how's the other called, River, just in Europe. I think Relay is actually the biggest one in Europe, the Bitcoin only one, if I got that right. So what are you kind of seeing from that side?
Yeah, we met at the investor dinners, because I was an investor, or I am an investor in Relay, and I followed on as well to their last round. And yeah, like the Bitcoin venture capital space is like heated up a lot. There's a lot of really interesting people coming to build on Bitcoin. It's getting a little bit tricky to figure out, like, are these people like legit Bitcoiners, or are they just like crypto guys that are trying to get Bitcoiner money, or are they just like, you know, shitcoiners that are trying to build something on Bitcoin that is disruptive to Bitcoin? That's never been something that I've had to think about before, but over the last few years, not so much this last 2 years, but during the whole like inscriptions and, you know, BRC20 thing, there was like a ton of like BSV people and Ethereum folks and other just general crypto guys. Like it was a lot of a lot of early Bitcoin people sold their Bitcoin too early and then got salty on Bitcoin and then got into crypto and then probably screwed that up too. A lot of people screwed that up too because there's so many scams in crypto. There's FTX was like everybody had their money at FTX. Self custody was kind of like not as much of a big deal in crypto as it is in Bitcoin. And when they started doing all the yield farming and all that stuff, and there was all these startups that came around to generate yield off of DeFi, a lot of people that were self-custodying their own stable coins or assets or whatever, they started using these centralized services. And so there's lots of opportunities for people to get burned. And if you were self-custodying, the amount of rug pulls and the amount of exploits and just key theft and all kinds of like front running and MEV extracting stuff that's going on in crypto DeFi world, like it caused, I think, a lot of folks to get turned off of Bitcoin even more in some way. But I saw a bunch of teams coming back to Bitcoin to build like inscription stuff or rare sat hunting stuff or like open sea type of stuff on Bitcoin. It's like I don't want to fund that stuff, like that's not really that much of an interest to me. And layer twos for Bitcoin, like, oh my God, it became obscene how many layer twos for Bitcoin there were. And it's all like they're building like a zero knowledge layer two and they got a token and they're supported by this huge exchange and like the VC arm of this huge exchange in China is like backing it. And so they're trying to get Bitcoin investors in. It's like that was a huge story like last year, the year before. This year, it's kind of cooled off a bit. You see a lot of Nostr startups now. Like I'm seeing a lot of people doing like peer-to-peer web stuff, which is really cool to see because as like a Bitcoin activist and like a free speech guy, and I care about privacy and decentralization and free speech, it's not just sound money. Like I'll invest in Nostr startups too because Nostr is like an adjacent to Bitcoin technology. It's just another free speech tool, part of the free speech stack. You also got now Arc and Spark, and those two things are kind of like, I'm seeing people come up now and raise for a wallet that they're going to build, which integrates into these, like I would say they're more legit layer twos. There's a bunch of like layer twos or layer threes or whatever you want to call them that are scams that are like just crypto guys selling a token to get rich off of that. But then there's a bunch of legit ones that are like actually using interesting technology and they don't have a token. So I've seen a bunch of that. eCash is coming up, which is really exciting. I've been watching that for the last few years. Like Cashew is gaining more and more popularity. That's another thing that makes me so excited about the future of Bitcoin. Like eCash systems are scalable to infinity. It's the only limit to how you can scale an eCash Bitcoin layer is really like the speed of the communication network that you're using. Like you can send Bitcoin over text messages. And so it's just however fast the text messages work and however many text messages can be sent over the phone's networks. Like that's the limit of scalability. So we're getting to the point now where, there's obviously some trade-offs, but this will be solved. I'm confident like all this stuff's going to be solved, but I think we're getting to the point now where Bitcoin scalability is like, I'm not even afraid of it anymore. I used to be a little bit scared of it. But all these new things are being built that will allow, once the fees do start to go up, it will allow people to efficiently and like use, effectively be able to use Bitcoin for either saving or spending or long-term, retirement, however you want. So if you're going to want long-term retirement, you use the base layer. If you're going to want spending, you can use Lightning or you can use eCash or you can use Arc or Spark. Or if you want trading or you want stable coins, you go Liquid. So there's lots of like layers to how Bitcoin scales, and we're still so early in just like peeling those layers back and seeing like what can we do with this thing. And I don't know. I've just never been like I've never felt like, oh, this is like stagnating and, oh, privacy is not being preserved, so I got to go find another cryptocurrency that cares about privacy or anything like that. It's just people that have all these fears, they're just not paying attention close enough. And because I'm building, not building, I'm like supporting the builders, and I'm trying to pay as much attention as I can to what's going on in Bitcoin rather than what's going on in crypto these days, because I want to focus, like I said, more on what I do care about and less on what triggers me and what I don't care about. And there's just like an endless amount of stuff to learn about what's really being built in Bitcoin. I've completely stayed away from the whole knots versus core stuff. I've completely stayed away from these soft fork talks. For me, it's just completely not productive. Like, I'd put that in the same bucket as like, I have no idea like what these guys are fighting about. I have a balanced view on the situation. And even though I'm an investor in Ocean, which Luke Dash Jr. is, the creator of Ocean, the Ocean Pool, and I believe like the same way about spam on Bitcoin. I don't think we need it. I also don't believe we should be censoring things. And I also don't believe that using another implementation is censorship. So it's like, it's a free market. You can choose what you want to do, right? But at the same time, nobody really cares on a big scale about this. So it's a bit of a waste of time to pay so much attention to it, in my opinion. Like, I'll just go with consensus with whatever we figure out on that. But I am glad there are people talking about it. But yeah, for me, it's like trying to find, or not even trying to find anymore. I don't try to find startups anymore. They just come to me because people kind of have known now that I'm, early, first check-in type of guy. And like I said, my Bitcoin duty is to like spread some sats around for the people that didn't get in as early as I did. And so that's why I like investing in Bitcoin exchanges that are doing Bitcoin only, and Bitcoin wallets that are using Lightning Network and eCash and all these latest technologies. I'm not necessarily investing so they can beat the returns of Bitcoin. So I'm not trying to just find startups that I think is going to do like a unicorn 1000x. Really, I'm paying my Bitcoin tithing. I'm like finding people that I like what they're doing. They're on the mission, and I believe that the area that they're building in needs some support. And my little check is going to go in some little way and help them, show them like, yeah, you should be doing this. And even if it fails, like, I'm not really going to care about it because I'm not running a fund. I'm investing because it's like part of my activist sort of Bitcoiner mission is to see like the haters get proven wrong. So I'm investing in all these things that most VCs wouldn't touch because I'm not looking at it like, oh, I want to beat Bitcoin. Because really, the way I'm looking at it is, if this stuff that I'm investing in works, then I'll probably see the results in my Bitcoin stack being worth more. So it's kind of like a little bit of a strange way to run as an angel investor. I don't know of any other industries where you would see investors investing like that. And there's not just me. There's a bunch of people like that. Maybe you'd see that in like environmental or something like that. Wherever there can be some kind of cause that's bigger than you. You know what I mean? Like, people could probably suspend their like capitalism brain for a little bit and be like, oh, this is so important, I just need to invest in this, right? Philanthropy is probably another one, but
I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Bitcoiners are so passionate about Bitcoin that they want to put their financial energy into Bitcoin, whether it's like investing in Bitcoin or even investing in Bitcoin startups, and also their life's energy. I think this is even bigger of saying like, hey, I don't want to work in Bitcoin. I want to do something for Bitcoin, even if it's just something small, even if it's something that I didn't do before. Like the amount of people wanting to contribute to Bitcoin is staggering, and I think you are a great testament to that. So, by the way, thank you so much for doing that, because like I think we need people contributing to Bitcoin in the way they can, and that's like everyone plays their own role, and they can do the best way to like shape the future, I guess. And also, when you were talking, I was kind of fascinating because you talked before like how hard it was at $30 how to even store the Bitcoin, where to keep them. So like those online websites, and there's those dot files and all of that. And now there's all those wallets, there's those exchanges, there's those great solutions and services and companies and products that came out from that. And it's kind of interesting because it hasn't been that long. Like it's like a decade ago, like a decade in between. So, it reminds me always when I talk with people that haven't been in early, it reminds me how far we've come and how quick actually it goes. And then it makes me exciting for what will happen in the next like 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Like that stuff exciting for me.
All right, one sec. I got to go to the bathroom.
Go ahead.
All right.
Awesome. Welcome back.
Thanks. It's even worse because I'm standing up here at a stand-up desk, so I can't cross my legs and hold it. I'm like, I gotta go.
I was thinking about that actually, because I'm always standing up when I work, and I'm always sitting down when I record, just because of the camera position and stuff like that. And it would take some time to because I'm almost 2 meters tall, so I need the camera somewhere high up. I don't know if even the thing gets up that far. But I actually thought about doing everything standing, because a lot the minds and the thoughts are also flowing better, I think, if you're standing versus sitting. Really cool.
Well, what you got to do, you got to put a camera arm on your desk. That's what I have. It's like a camera arm that attaches to your desk. So as you lift your desk up and down, the camera goes up and down with you.
I did that, and people complained that my camera is wobbling because I keep hitting my desk, and then the camera was wobbling, and they're like,
yeah,
"Oh, I'm getting."
Can you see it do it? Because mine's low. I can see my camera wobbling, but it doesn't look like I'm wobbling.
Yours is better. Maybe there's some stabilizer effect.
Maybe I got a stabilizer camera. Yeah.
maybe that's the solution, that I have some stabilizing thing going on. But yeah, anyways, I think, it's a good, yeah, like putting it on the thing and on the table and have it stabilize. But anyways, one thing I really wanted to talk with you also about, because like we're almost at the 1 hour mark already. You mentioned you lost recently money in treasury companies, and I think the treasury company space is really interesting. It's like exciting, but still like it feels almost scammy. Like I have both feelings, where at altcoins I always had like only the scammy feeling, but at some point with the treasury companies I also feel like exciting because it's in Bitcoin. How do you see the whole space and the different kind of treasury companies there are actually?
Oh man, well, when I was saying like, the crypto guys would come to Bitcoin to build, like really it's shown up in the last year as the treasury companies, not just startups and trying to raise money from VCs, but now treasury companies. There's like people who are not really Bitcoiners, but they like learn the language to try to trick people that they get it and whatever. And genuinely, I think a bunch of them saw the light with Seyr. Like they kind of became obsessed with less buying. And some of these folks like kind of really had like a come to Satoshi moment with watching Seyr just operate at this level, and they are raising money for Bitcoin treasury companies. But then it was like probably so there's like inevitable that it's inevitable that Bitcoin treasury companies are going to be a thing. And you could see like Hal Finney and Satoshi, I think, were talking about this stuff back in like 2010 and 11 on the Bitcoin talk forums and the mailing list about how Bitcoin banks were going to operate and how, Bitcoin is going to potentially go to $1 million and companies would use it as their savings vehicle or whatever. So it's not like, oh, well, this is not good for Bitcoin. It's centralizing to Wall Street. Like this is what a lot of critics are saying. Cypherpunk type critics are saying this stuff, like people who genuinely do care about these issues and people who are just like concern trolling and really nihilistic about Bitcoin because they missed it and their crypto is not doing good. So they're like, oh, well, Bitcoin's like lost its way anyways, because look at the treasury companies. So there's like a bunch of nonsense going on there. But I feel like as an investment opportunity, really, there's not that many treasury companies that you'd want to invest in. And it's probably, it makes sense. Like for me personally, like I said, we have a TFSA and an RSP in Canada. One of them's tax-free, one of them's tax-deferred. In that case, it makes sense, like buy some MicroStrategy or buy some, whatever your goal is. If you want some income or whatever, you can buy one of the MicroStrategy products. But taking bets on the smaller treasury companies has turned out to be really bad. And I was under the assumption that there was going to be like one main treasury company in each jurisdiction in each stock market. And if you got a Bitcoiner or a group of Bitcoiners together that you combined with market operators, and you could have like a sophisticated market operator team with Bitcoin values and Bitcoiners to educate and go raise and do investor relations and whatever, then you could have some successful Bitcoin companies, and that this NAV premium would continue as long as the money printer continues. And so I was under this assumption that like, I still don't understand the valuation of most public companies that are in the top of the indexes. They're way overvalued on PE terms. But there's this sort of measurement of net present value that a lot of analysts and investors or whatever, they like buy that. Like, what's the net present value of the company? And they do that type of an analysis. And it's like, you can't really do that analysis on a Bitcoin treasury company. When it has a premium, it sounds scammy. It sounds like unsustainable. It sounds like a bubble. But if like the way that my mind was going at this was like, okay, if we still live in a fiat world and everything is operating in the public markets, at least pulling forward the future gains in the present to have a net present value, then there is some rationale behind overvaluing Bitcoin treasury companies in the present based on what they say they're going to do in the future and how their ability to execute the Bitcoin purchasing and the financial product creation, the financial engineering in the present, like how that works out. So if you have a Bitcoin treasury company like Michael Saylor's, who's focused 100% on Bitcoin, he's laser focused on the message of what he's going to do, and he's welcoming shorters and longers because they all know what he's going to do. You know, you can have credit ratings and stuff because you're not out doing a whole bunch of stuff. You're not going to go and buy up distressed treasury companies. You're not going to do Bitcoin mining. You're not going to do Bitcoin VC investing with the treasury. You're not going to do Bitcoin lending with the treasury. It's like you're just going to buy Bitcoin and you're going to keep doing that, and you're going to raise as much money as possible and buy Bitcoin. Well, in that world where Apple has like a crazy premium and Amazon has a crazy premium, we all believe Bitcoin is going to higher prices. So yeah, it makes a little sense to pull forward the future gains and the future ability for that treasury company to continue operating at this impressive pace to give a value of a premium on the treasury. So that is kind of like the logic I was using, but it seems like markets have been going the wrong way over the last little bit. And it was probably it was August. It was like end of July, early August when I started seeing the shitcoin treasury deals happening. And it's like, you know, a friend of mine from the early days is like, you know, like I said, one of these folks that missed Bitcoin. They sold their Bitcoin too early. They're very influential, but they don't have much Bitcoin. Well, they're going to get paid $1 million to go start a shitcoin treasury company. And then they're going to go ring the bell about like how, you know, it's a great opportunity to buy this shitcoin treasury company. And then they raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. When I started seeing that happening, I was like, the shitcoiners are coming and they're going to ruin this like they ruin everything. Like the shitcoin VCs and the shitcoin investors, they're going to create this insane bubble, or they're going to just blow up and cause a bunch of problems. So that's what I was thinking, like, okay, I'm going to stop investing in treasury companies, Bitcoin treasury companies, because the shitcoiners just do it better. Like you said, it kind of feels a little scammy, and like, who does scammy better than crypto people? Right? So when it was like obvious to me that the Ethereum one is coming raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and then there's like blah 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 coin one doing it, like this is now, they've ruined the party before the party really ever got started, which sucked. So all this money started, like the investor mind share for the non-tier one Bitcoin treasury companies started getting split up now because Wall Street is involved. Like Wall Street is here. Cantor Fitzgerald is here. They're doing the treasury company with Adam Back, but they're also doing an Ethereum treasury company, and they're also doing this other crap. So like these Wall Street firms, if you've ever watched any movies about Wall Street, like Big Short or Boiler Room or Wolf of Wall Street or any of this stuff, I mean, it's true. Like these guys are just all about dollars. They just want to make money. And they're sales guys. They're really good, effective sales guys. They don't really care about Bitcoin. They don't really care about any of this other stuff for the most part. They're just trying to make money. And they will, like, they're not going to just work with Bitcoiners if there's all this money being thrown around by the shitcoin foundations and stuff. They're going to work with them too. So that's where, in my opinion, things kind of started going sideways. Was, you know, David Bailey was doing a really good job of like rallying all the Bitcoin people together and rallying the crypto people to start investing in Bitcoin treasuries. David Bailey combined with Michael Saylor out there educating people and inspiring people. It kind of, there was this moment where the energy was like, okay, this is sustainable. Like this actually can work. There can be one Bitcoin treasury company in each jurisdiction and it can be successful. But, you know, we live in this world now where crime is legal and the president has his own shitcoin. So obviously things didn't go the way that I think most of the Bitcoiners would have wanted to see them go. And there was kind of like a liquidity vacuum because now there's just too many options. All these treasury companies are competing with each other now. And you could see it on Twitter. Like people are all these communities started to develop, and it's the exact same thing that happened in crypto world. you know, when Ethereum started to get cannibalized by Avalanche and Solana and all these, you know, Bitcoin, BNC, like, what's it called? BNB, like, you could see the market cap of Ethereum dropping as the market cap of Solana grew and the market cap of AVAX went up. And you have all these, the sunk cost fallacy, or sorry, this free rider fallacy, or free rider problem. When it comes to corporate equity, it is a real thing, like a free rider problem, where these, you know, coins, and in this case, the treasury company stocks, influential people, whether they're like Bitcoin influencers or Wall Street market wizards or whatever, they're going to be like, why would I promote this one when I have the network? I'm just going to go raise for this one. And then they're going to outsell and outmarket the other smaller treasury companies. And that's what happened with crypto world. Like, there was a bunch of people that, you know, they created their own layer one blockchain, and then they didn't get enough of it. And they're like, oh, well, now this thing is successful, but I don't have a big enough pre-mine piece. So I'm just going to go start another one where I got a bigger pre-mine. And then the guys go and abandon the one that they built up and then go build another one so they can have more money. And it works because they're good at marketing and they got a big following. Well, like, it's cannibalism. It's crypto cannibalism. And I think we saw the same thing happen with the Bitcoin treasuries. And, you know, like, Michael Seyr is probably one of the biggest and best operators, I would say, in Bitcoin world. And by that I mean, like, you know, think of how many thousands of employees there are at MicroStrategy, and they're not all Bitcoiners. And like, leadership and execution and operations is completely different than I've got a great vision and I've got a great idea and I'm going to do this Bitcoin treasury startup and we're just going to buy a bunch of Bitcoin. Because like, there's two separate worlds that are being competed in here. There's like big boy treasury company on a public market that is potentially going to be, you know, a top 100 company someday, that has thousands of employees and that has systems and processes and SOPs and recruiting and hiring and like all of the things that go along with having a major company. Like, that is a skill that Michael Seyr has developed over his 25, 30 years, whatever it's been, running a public company. And Bitcoiners that are coming in now, or even small companies that are doing Bitcoin treasury companies, they don't have those skills, and we need to build those skills up. And it's just, in some way, I think it's just a different league that Michael Seyr is operating in. And the league that the Bitcoin treasury companies are operating in is like, you know, the shitcoin league, basically. It's like, it kind of seems very similar. It's like, well, I you know, except Bitcoin is the thing that's powering it instead of some random coin that's not worth anything. But yeah, they're very similar in a lot of ways. It's like, in a way, it's like cannibalism. It's like cannibalizing the energy away from each other and away from Bitcoin and away from self-custody and away from the mission, and actually has kind of been destroying wealth. So people investing in Bitcoin treasury companies over the last few months, they've not been doing very well compared to, you know, people that have just been holding Bitcoin.
So is it fair to say that there's no second best Bitcoin treasury company to Strategy? It
certainly seems like that. I mean, like, me personally, I was like in this zone of FOMO, and, you know, I got inside access to these deals that I'm getting invited to do, like, at good NAV rates and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, well, if I want to have some of my Bitcoin wealth in the traditional system so that I can like get a mortgage, because the bank doesn't see any of my Bitcoin as an asset, they don't recognize it. So I was like, well, I can diversify out of Bitcoin proper and go into Bitcoin treasury company, then at the same time get a good NAV rate and get a little bit of an alpha on Bitcoin by participating in this movement of treasury companies. Well, then maybe I'll do that, and that'll be my way to have some money in the system. And so instead of just buying MicroStrategy, I decided, well, I was going to do that. I was going to go back a whole bunch of these other companies in different jurisdictions and be able to benefit off this movement, right? Because I missed MicroStrategy. I was like watching it, cheering them on, seeing all my, my buddies who were in it, like make good money. And a couple of people that were doing the options on them made like insane money. And I was like, good for you. It's amazing. I love seeing this. But I didn't participate. So in a way, it was kind of a little bit like me buying a shit coin because I missed Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It was like I didn't buy MicroStrategy because it went up too much. And I was like, I'll go buy this one. I'll go buy this one. I'll go buy this one. And like, it's all the same, So in a way, like buying these other treasury companies kind of is the same energy as like being salty about missing Bitcoin and then going and buying Zcash or something like that because you see people talking about it and it's pumping. So yeah, and right now I'm even still torn about it, to be honest, Robin. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. I don't know if I should be in MicroStrategy. That's not doing very well either. Like it's so complex and complicated now, like all these different products they have that I don't even understand it anymore. I don't know where the risk is anymore. Strife and Stride and Strike and all this stuff. I'm like, what do they do? And what does this mean for the equity holder? And I just like, this is nuts. This is like too complicated for retail Bitcoiners, or whatever you want to call ourselves, the plebs or whatever. I'd rather just hold Bitcoin. Honestly, it just seems like a better option is just to hold the Bitcoin.
I like that approach. I mean, I recently got a small under 1% position just to force myself to research it, because I also have no clue about the stock options. As I said before, like the same way as I did with Bitcoin, I made a small position in Bitcoin to force myself to learn about Bitcoin, and now I'm like make a small position strategy just to like learn about all the treasury companies, because I've watched it the past. Like 2 years now that I have my podcast, almost 2 years after podcast, I had so many people on my podcast, probably like 50 or 60 people, because I do it every single day. So I'm approaching 700 episodes. I had probably 50 or 100, maybe even above 100 people telling me about how great strategy is and all those things. And I never bought it. I never, I had Seyr on my podcast about his 100K party. I never bought strategy. I just never wanted to do it. And it's just like, now I'm like, shit, like I feel like I missed the boat, but I just buy a little to force myself to learn it, and maybe in a month and two I learn about it and sell it again. But I don't know, like it seems too big of a topic for me to completely ignore it at that point. That's how I look at it now.
Well, the way I'm looking at it myself, and the lessons I've learned over the years of being in Bitcoin, losing money many times, being in crypto, like in the 2017 era with all the bubbles and stuff, like getting too deep into crypto to do the same thing, try to make Bitcoin. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned a lot about portfolio management, risk management, counterparty risk, and all these things. And I've read a lot of books on trading and investing, like trend following books and portfolio management books and like historical fiction books, like Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. Read that like 5 times already. And there's lessons that you can keep learning and keep learning. But you gotta, like, if you're going to trade, you should keep a trading journal, and you should like log when you make decisions, what you're feeling and why you made the decision. And when the trade goes against you, you should also log that too. Like, why did you go against the rules? Like, what was it you were feeling? Like, what's the skill that you need to learn to get over it or whatever? A lot of times it's like people look at themselves as investors, but then they become traders, and traders and investors are two completely different mindsets. Like, traders need to follow the rules emotionlessly. They need to have stop losses. They need to have a mathematical strategy that they're sticking to. It can't be just feelings and vibes and, I think this is going to do good, I'm going to buy it. And you got to stop your losses. And, you got to have a target where you're going to take profits. And it's like a career. Like, trading is more like a job. And if you treat it like a job, you can probably succeed at it. Whether you're trading stocks or whether you're trading crypto or whether you're trading treasury companies or whatever you're trading, futures, options, whatever it is. If you put in the time and you treat it like it's a money-making endeavor, and then you just separate that from your Bitcoin mindset and your investor mindset, whereas an investor is holding over longer term time frames and is kind of investing on a long-term thesis and is taking long calculated bets and not worrying about the price fluctuations in the short term. So those two things, everybody gets confused when, like me personally, this cycle, I'm an investor. I know I'm an investor. Like I've learned enough over the years to know I'm not good at trading. I'm too emotional. I can't execute when I need to, when it's the stops, are hit. I'm like, oh, well, maybe the news will change and it'll come back up. And then I become a bag holder. So like, if you know this about yourself, that you can't be an efficient trader and get rid of your emotions and follow the rules and follow your plan and keep a trading journal and really stay on top of it like a job, then you probably shouldn't be trading, because even if you win, you're just going to learn bad habits. And then eventually what's going to happen is you're going to lose a lot. So like if you win by not having a plan, you're going to gain this false confidence that you got some skill or some innate ability or something like that. And then as your portfolio grows, you're going to keep doing it wrong. And eventually you're just going to blow yourself up because you're taking a bigger size bet. And then before you know it, you're blown up. So like investors really shouldn't be trading. And so like when I was thinking about it in the summer as like, oh, I'm going to invest in these treasury companies, I was fooling myself. I was like convincing myself that I was investing when really I was trading. I was trying to take capitalize on this short-term FOMO and this cyclical sort of energy that was around, and all my friends making money off their private investments into ones that I missed and I wasn't paying attention to. And I'm like, no, but I'm an investor, but okay, I'm going to invest in these treasury companies. And that's the situation I'm in right now. I'm like, yeah, I can never have the level of conviction in a treasury company that I can have in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, I can do the fundamental research and I can understand the risks and I can understand how this thing is going to become a global reserve asset and continue to grow into the future. And I can sit through bear markets just fine, because I know that where it's going is based off of supply and demand, and how small it is as the world grows into it, it becomes bigger, etc. Like I can have very strong, unwavering conviction in Bitcoin to allow me to disconnect from that and not worry about Bitcoin. On a treasury company level, you don't know what the board's going to decide to do. You don't know what the jurisdiction is going to do that the company is in. You don't know if they're going to dilute you. You don't know if they're going to change management. You know what I mean? Like even if you really have conviction in a team or a treasury company thesis, you can never have the level of conviction on a treasury company as you can on Bitcoin. Some people might be able to have it with Seyr because he's like a unique, like unicorn type of treasury company situation. But for me, I realized it was like I was having all this back pain. Even when we were in Lugano, remember I had that shit on my back? I had wires coming out of me. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had this thing I was carrying around because I couldn't move without it. My back pain was so bad. And I was like, I have to have these like TENS machine like going on all the time. But I didn't want to miss any of the stuff. So I kept hooking myself up to it. And I realized it was because of the freaking treasury companies. It was because they were getting cratered. And I was like, I used to have this back pain in previous Bitcoin cycles when we'd go into the bear market, or when we're about to hit a bear market, I would have bad back pain, and people would like make fun of me for it because I post about it and stuff. But the back pain went away when I started exercising. And when I started like building up my back muscles and going to the gym 6 days a week and eating right and disconnecting from all the macro news and all the crazy shit, the back pain went away because I got to a point where I can have unwavering conviction in Bitcoin and where it's going. And it took me like 13 years to get to that point. But then I went and self-sabotaged by investing in these treasury companies. And the back pain came back. And I realized it's because I can't ever have the level of conviction I have in a Bitcoin in a treasury company. So when I made the decision, like me and Willie Woo had dinner, like I think the night that we met, it was like that night or the night after. And we had this big long conversation about the market and treasury companies. And I realized like my body was causing this back pain, as it was like I was not in consensus with my own values and with myself. And there was something I was doing that was like, my body was like, what are you doing? Like, stop, change course, you know? He's like screaming at me. And this, I swear to God, man, like once I realized that like this was just an internal thing that was me, and was like these treasury companies was like causing my back pain, the next day I woke up and it was gone. And I had this for like 10 days at that point. I was at the Bitcoin conference in Montreal. I traveled all the way to Lugano. I was going to the conference and I had this back pain the whole time, but I'm like eating healthy and working out, doing my cut, and still like struggling through it, trying to make it through. As soon as I labeled it and realized what it was, the next morning it was gone. And I had made the decision in my head that I was going to sell all the treasury companies. I'm like, okay, that's what's causing this back pain. I don't want treasury companies anymore. Maybe I'll keep some MicroStrategy or some of the like smaller ones that I've invested in that are like overseas and it's not a huge percentage of my portfolio or whatever. But the ones that were like causing me to be like thinking about it, I'm just going to get rid of them. Cause like it's not worth it for me to try to ride it back up. Like I'll just sell it at a crazy loss and then, just deal with it. So that's what ended up happening. And I'm still in the process of that right now.
That's super interesting. And really interesting also the see the back pain. There's always, the mind definitely has a huge impact on the body. It took me some time to actually figure that out, where if you have weird pains in your body, yes, it probably means you don't exercise enough, but if you do exercise enough and you do good for your body, maybe you're not stretching enough. Like there's also another thing like stretching. I'm not doing enough and like doing the those kind of things. But it might just be like stress in your body that you're kind of depressing and you're getting out that way. Really interesting. We have one question that I ask each and every one of my guests that comes on my podcast the first time, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Well, I feel like I've tried to share some of my lessons learned throughout the show in mindset and coming at this from the average listener, potentially 40-year-old American that's dealing with inflation and trying to use Bitcoin as a savings vehicle. You got to be careful about a couple of things. You got to like protect your mindset from negative inputs. And in that way, like try not to become too obsessed over Twitter, drama, macro. Really, for me, what the best thing was just like working on myself and realizing that I was not the type of person that would have been able to handle Citadel level wealth that comes with holding Bitcoin for another 10 years, because my body was like falling apart at less than 100,000 a coin. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen when I get to, when Bitcoin gets to 1 million a coin? Like, am I ready for that? Am I able to mentally handle the stress of that? And I guess like the main thing is that people should realize that when you go all in on Bitcoin, you're signing up for a life of change, because Bitcoin is going to change the world, and it will change your world as well, because you're going along for the ride if you're strong enough to hold on, right? And so you got to work on your mindset, you got to work on your body, you got to work on your relationships, and kind of take radical ownership for yourself. Sovereignty with not just the money, but sovereignty with your mind. Protect your mind. Don't get distracted by shit coins and drama and negative world news and wars and all this stuff. Find what it is you want to focus on and like focus more on that and add that in and remove the negative inputs. And then you got to be able to deal with change in your life. Like as your level of wealth grows, you're going to have your mind is going to change. Your relationships are going to change. Your where you live is going to change. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to change about you. And your job is just like, once you realize that Bitcoin is inevitable is to just harness that inevitability and try to like live a life of proof of work, increase your mindset, increase your strength through working out, and set goals, and just try to be able to adapt and change with Bitcoin as it changes the world.
It's really important. Like the adaptability is probably like one of the biggest things. Like there's always like I don't want to talk. It's hard for me because like I'm so young. So like and so like I don't want to pretend I have any life experience or anything to learn so far. But the few years that I have is like adapting to new situations. That's freaking important overall. But I want to be respectful for your time. We have one more question as we come close to the end of our podcast, the end routine of the podcast, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what is the most difficult thing? And maybe you have already answered it somehow, but what is the most difficult thing you have ever gone through? And what have you learned from it?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd say the most difficult thing I've gone through is probably my wife was diagnosed with a rare disorder, a rare blood disease back in like 2016. And it was like during the bear market of, 2016. So things were already going poorly for me financially. And my wife was then, diagnosed with this rare disease, and she ended up in the hospital. She had to get a blood transfusion, and we didn't know what it was. And we had to kind of, the medical system here in Canada is not the greatest. So it was I had to treat it like a startup. I had to treat it like my full-time focus to figure out what was wrong with my wife. Because in Canada, it's more like as long as you're alive, then they don't care about your quality of life. Like as long as they keep you alive. So it was difficult to get the doctors to really pay attention to her case and figure it out. It was more like, oh, we'll give you some of these medicines, and then, if it happens again, come back. But like, that wasn't good enough for me. So my daughter was really young at the time, and my wife had like lost all of her hair and her eyebrows, and she was going through the shit because of her rare disease. And I was like kind of mentally like at my limit. And I was like unsure how to survive cheerfully through all this shit that was going on. And I kind of started to look into like stoicism, and I started kind of reading books like Blood Meridian and stuff about like what's the worst case scenario, like what is the worst that could happen. And I was like through stoicism and going to those places, I realized like, okay, I got a lot to be grateful for. I'm broke. My Bitcoin's in the shitter. My wife's not doing good, but like I've got my own health. I've got my own fortitude. She's still alive. I can still work on this and try to figure out what was wrong so she can have a better quality of life. I can still spend time with my family. Like I live in a country that even though the healthcare system sucks, I'm not like in rural Africa somewhere. So going into the stoicism thing, it helped me, but then I stayed in it too long, and what ended up happening was I stunted myself emotionally. So I would caution anybody that's trying to get through things with stoicism to not go so far into stoicism that you stunt yourself emotionally. And the mindset's super important. Like stay focused on positive goals, do the work every day, and show up and be consistent. And that's what kind of helped me get out of it. Was like literally I started gratitude journaling again, and like making goals and figuring out like what did I have to do every day just to get through this. Like what were the 3 things I have to do every day, and then I would consider this day a success. And then I would just kind of listen to mindset audio books and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I would say that would be probably the worst thing that I've gone through. But I mean, it's been like a 10-year journey for me to get back to a place where I felt like I was before that. Like it wasn't until just like this last year that I felt like myself again. Like I'm connected to my emotions again. I'm feeling warmth in my heart again. My wife's great now. With her, we figured out what was wrong with her. She's on for like 5 years now. She's been on medicine that's, pretty much made her better. It's a routine she has to do every week though. But yeah, there was that whole process of being disconnected from my emotions and then going so much into Bitcoin and stoicism and being like long-term focused, thinking more about like in 10 years, Bitcoin's going to be $1 million a coin, $10 million a coin, whatever it is. I'm going to like think about the future more than I think about the present. And that caused me to disconnect from my emotional side and not feel things in the present as much and as deeply as I should have been. So yeah, it's just getting back into meditation and, using some of the things of stoicism where, it can help you get through rough times, but then not staying stuck in the future or stuck in the past, like focusing more on my intentions and enjoying the present. And I realized that if I want to live the life of my dreams, I got to love the life I'm living now. And that will just pull the life of my dreams into my current reality. So instead of always be thinking, I wish I could do this. I wish this was my life. I wish we were this way. Love exactly what it is right now. Love the way that I am right now. Love my relationship with my wife. Love the net worth that I have. And don't focus so much on the future as much as like, I'm going to live the life of my dreams now and just love the life that I'm living now.
That's beautiful. I think this is the perfect ending to this podcast. I think also this is really, really cool. Thank you so much, Brett, for being on. But before I let you go, where can people find you and find the stuff that you are doing?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram these days. I'm posting on my stories all the time. Like I'm going through the cut, like I said, at the moment. So I try to post like once a day about what's inspiring me, or try to be an example for maybe anybody out there that's thinking about wanting to get fit. I wasn't like a fit person growing up or anything, and I wasn't happy with myself. And 2 years ago or so, when I finally realized like, hey, like I got to start like being confident with my body and being confident when I look in the mirror. So I got to put the work in. I can't do fad diets. I can't do fad workouts. I actually have to just go to the gym 6 days a week and work out and eat right. So I started coaching with this guy, Dan Martell, and he wrote this really good book called Buy Back Your Time. And so I read that book and I just started adapting his philosophies into my life. And so one of the things he talks about there is just post once a day. So I call it my proof of work post. So every day I try to post something on there, proof of work, like something I'm reading, something I'm doing, or some workout or something like that, just something positive. So I don't know if that maybe people need that for inspiration. Like hit me up on Instagram at Brad Mills Can and, follow along my stories, I guess, and keep me accountable too. I talked a lot of shit on this podcast about motivational stuff, but if you don't see me posting my proof of work, you send me a DM and say, hey man, where's your workout today? Because I'm not the most consistent, but I am focusing on harnessing proof of work in TikTok next block. So keep me consistent.
Public accountability is amazing. It's with my daily podcast. There's a lot of times where I'm like, it's so hard to keep it up, because especially now when there's like conferences and there's Christmas coming up and all of those things where I cannot record, so I have to record previously like 3-4 times a day to keep it up through those times. And then it's like, oh, I cannot stop this. Like I've set out that goal that I do a daily podcast, and public accountability is the best.
How many days you've been doing it for?
I don't know exactly when I started. I think somewhere February 2024. I started the daily ones. The podcast started on 28th of November 2023, and I switched, I think, in February 2024 to doing it daily. So you are my 662nd episode. So I'm closing down on my 700 episodes.
Crazy, man! Congrats. That's consistency right there.
Yeah, it's really cool, but it comes with a lot of sacrifices doing it every single day, like 1.5 hours, and now we're recording like 140 minutes, probably something like that here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me get a picture for Instagram, and then I'll let you go. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brett, for being on, and also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow, as always, with another episode. Bye bye.
this content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.